an undisclosed location in the Great Western Desert in the land of the free and autonomous Native American people. The 2024 presidential campaign elects time to return all US land back to their rightful owners. This is the Benzyme Podcast.
Techno-communism. Welcome back to the Techno-communism show. The world seems to be quite literally on the brink of World War III. And this is owing, as ever, to the mega-trillion-dollar war machines of the fascist West and the nearly trillion-dollar war machine of the U.S. military-industrial complex, playing games, destabilizing, baiting, robbing the global South. I hope you're following what's happening right now in Niger and Nigeria and France. This is not the problem of Niger, Nigeria, and France. The problems of colonialism and neocolonialism have never been the fault of people in the global South. This is a problem of fascists, colonizers. I'm just going to read some absolute lunatics, and I'm just going to read some headlines and just a few words, not much of the article, touching upon some of the problems of the United States today, in no particular order. More than 1 million Americans missing as U.S. endures a crisis of early death. So this is the beginning to have an accounting for the undersold numbers of dead in this COVID era. If the United States had the same mortality rate as other wealthy countries, who themselves have had quite negative COVID impacts, but the United States is cut above these other fascist countries in terms of its bad treatment of its citizens. If the United States had the same mortality rates as other wealthy countries, more than 1 million people would have avoided death in 2021 alone, a new study found. Researchers have termed these excess deaths the missing Americans. And this is a story in MSN. It says this is a mystery. How could this happen? Well, it's not hard to figure out how this could happen. A fascist country, an anti-communist country, fights in other parts of the world to see that people don't have basic necessaries, housing authority, public health service, job and wage guarantees. That is the function of anti-communism, to prevent all of those kinds of things and to funnel resources into the hands of a few elites. So, of course, if they're fighting everywhere else, 40 million dead just in living memory, killed in anti-communist wars spearheaded by the United States. Of course, they can't provide more than the bare semblance of those things to their own citizens. The United States has a public health service that doesn't work well, and it's only for elderly people and disabled people. Everyone else is forced into more for-profit system that kills approximately 100,000 people in recent years, and 1 million people just in 2021. They were almost all were blaming themselves for institutional failings, for murders. Moving on. Time is running out on the climate clock. According to TheVerge.com, the world has less than 6 years left to hit crucial global climate goals, according to the clock. Yes. And if you wonder why the United States seems behaving more radically, acting with impunity in the ways that it did, and when it had organizations like the William Randolph Hearst media organization just lying it into wars, today there's a more complicated dance that goes into this very same kind of shenanigans. But the United States is beginning to go back to that earlier pattern of insane behavior, and that's because people are becoming aware of this set of problems, and they'll do anything that they can to distract from this set of problems, because in the addressing of this set of problems, and the set of problems is no less than the death of yourself and everyone you know, and all future human life, capitalism's climate apocalypse, preventing this would require taking a very, very firm stand against private wealth. The United States and the fascist West will never do anything other than protect private wealth at your expense, expense of millions of dead. You're probably familiar with the climate clock, but it's above New York City's Union Square, and I'm here in Phoenix, Arizona. It's once again pushed up to 110 degrees for the 36th consecutive day. It's unprecedented. And what are you going to do when it's 135 degrees in February in your city? And because of the inability of plants and trees to continue to filter CO2 out of the air, and because of the inability of the oceans, we've also destroyed in a tremendous way to do the same. You're basically facing a mass asphyxiation event. The air is thinned out to the point of being very much not breathable. What are you going to do in 15 years when that's the climate crisis that you're looking at? Well, this is why we must rise up against these fascist actors today. The United States is a ringleader of capitalism's climate apocalypse and all the other dirty deeds that have contributed to it, essentially. And they stand directly in the way of your survival. That's why the entire world. This is one of the biggest criticisms of American communists and leftists, if there are such things as leftists, is that they focus on criticisms of people elsewhere's. And if you're a communist, you shouldn't even be thinking about what's going on in another country. You should be focusing on organizing a revolution in this country that's killing the entire planet to a high degree. And an awful lot of online sock puppet accounts and chatbot accounts, increasingly more and more chatbot accounts, putting their thumb on the scale to force these people who are revolution-minded into conversations that have nothing to do with stopping the fascist West and its ringleader, the U.S., from killing the planet. They're talking about all manner of other things unrelated to that project. And it's only your life that hangs in the balance, right? Moving on. Our civilization was built for a climate that's today vanishing. This is from the Washington Post. Again, I'll touch upon the problems. I won't begin to discuss the issue of abolishing private wealth and taking a stand against imperialism, because they are imperialist mouthpiece. You can learn a lot about the climate we live in by the buildings we construct. There's a series of segments about how we simply are not going to have the correct kind of infrastructure for a world that is, for example, 130 degrees in February and thinning air, and other effects of the climate crisis. So, how did we get here? Well, one way that we got here from TheVerge.com, Rivian CEO. Of course, CEOs are universally part of the problem, but we can glean some wisdom perhaps here nevertheless. There's far too much greenwashing in the system, according to the Rivian CEO. The EV company announced it's going to be starting up a big solar farm. So all kinds of companies have made claims of being eco-friendly. Very little of that is, almost none of that has a positive impact. It's just like this most glaring example of Tesla. If the founder or the owner of Tesla, Elon Musk, were really interested in helping the planet in any way, he wouldn't be propping up an automotive industry and adding another sector to the automotive industry that also has as big of an environmental impact as the other sectors. He would be supporting mass transit, supporting making fossil fuels illegal, supporting ending this sector this automotive sector effectively, except for the most essential of commercial purposes. He would be supporting even things like electric bicycles and bike pathways, the more traditional kind, all throughout. But he doesn't do that because he's a charlatan. He's greenwashing capitalism, and this has become a massive cottage industry. And you should probably check out that article from TheVerge.com. That is by Mitchell Clark, TheVerge.com. What's What else is happening because of this? These false efforts at saving our planet. Well, scientists say that the recycling project, such as it is, has backfired spectacularly. That's another from even decades before, a greenwashing project, again putting the onus on working people instead of forcing corporations to reduce their environmental impact. So they created this business called recycling, and it's now been demonstrated that that's actually done nothing or had a negative impact. So it was just a show to allow ecological fascists. You ever refer to someone, hear someone refer to someone like Benzion as an eco-fascist? I know that that's a CIA talking point, a pretty particularly crafted word to deflect and confuse people in a conversation wherein actual fascists are ecologically raping the planet. So we use this word eco-fascist not to describe those people, capitalist pigs who are murdering you, but to describe people who are standing against capitalist pigs who are murdering you. So anybody who uses this word eco-fascist, I mean, I've seen it used in some contexts where it's seems to be a little bit more coherent, but virtually anybody who's using this word is going to be a crypto-fascist, someone who is a climate denier, and someone who might call themselves a communist or a leftist, for example, but is really not living in reality as to the problems that we face and the causes of those things. Another example here from futurism.com of an article that you should definitely check out. It's from Noor Al-Sabeh. Recycling doesn't really do much. And then people have been, real eco-socialists have been saying that for 30 years, but now it's been demonstrated more clearly. I mentioned World War III. What is World War III going to look like? Well, almost all of the people who are killed will be in the global south. They will be places like the U.S. and France will initiate proxy wars and all manner of dirty deeds to see that they are not the ones who pay the price for their chicanery and warmongering, but people, poorer working people in other parts of the world, are the ones who do indeed pay the price. This is from Will Knight, Wired.com. Like a lot of, almost as bad as some of these others that I just mentioned, are pretty aggressively pro-business. Don't let the veneer of technobabble layered over what they're writing for the most part confuse you. They're capitalists, and this is a problem of techies and futurists all across the imperial core, not just the Black Magazine. The AI-powered, totally autonomous future of war is here. Ships without crews, self-directed drone swarms, how a U.S. naval task force is using off-the-shelf robotics and artificial intelligence to prepare for the next age of conflict. So you notice how this is just kind of said in a matter-of-fact way. This is not problematic. The U.S. and the fascist West are the principal source of elitist violence, fascist violence in this world. It's just we need to be ready for the next conflict, as if these are just actions beyond their control and not things caused by the fascist West. And I mentioned in passing futurists a moment ago. There's a dozen more futurist orgs of some significance that are controlled, are heavily influenced rather by one of the outfits that is principally responsible for this AI-powered warfare, that is Palantir. Palantir is more or less just an extension of the Central Intelligence Agency into the private sector, and it's done hellish things in the world of tech and the world of law enforcement and in the world of militarization, and it's also there's a huge number of these tech orgs that that they try to present themselves as being not so specifically fascist, but they're very much steered by Peter Thiel, who is the founder and, and chief architect of Palantir. He's not the CEO, but he's an unpopular and controversial figure, so he's ostensibly stepped back from that role, but not really, right? So you will find maybe 1 in 500, maybe 1 in 1,000 techies in the Western world, in the U.S., who are not some kind of anti-communist, some kind of fascist sympathizers, and almost every one of these organizations, or a great number of them, they'll happily take money from Palantir, these very warmongers, and they'll happily cozy up to organizations that are almost as bad, places that have reputations for being real nice guys, like Google, but they're essentially military contractors serving the same hell world. So you should probably understand the state of the science of artificial intelligence. Palantir has been working with his other cutouts to develop AI that is able to strategically and tactically dominate in warfare, but also the automation itself of these things, as mentioned in this headline, has been going on for a long time. And I would recommend that you read these kind of articles, but really do read them with a grain of salt, because they almost all have a pretty incredible fascist bias. We'll end it on, I guess, a slightly less somber note. This is from The Independent, a UK paper. Scientists build a brain-computer interface that connects via the ear canal, so a less invasive but a more thoroughgoing design. It's basically two major designs for brain-computer interfaces. As if you've watched the show at all, you know that I'm a hive mind collectivist. So I am the kind of communist who wants to see human interaction go beyond that that's currently possible, and so a kind of collectivism that is in some senses more stronger than that of other communists, although that remains to be seen, and I will reserve judgment on all of that until this sort of thing really comes into practice. But that's why I sometimes talk about these things. This is from Anthony Cuthbertson, and as I mentioned, there are two major kinds of designs essentially for brain-computer interfaces. One might be a kind like the article I read about, a graphene brain-computer interface. It sits on your head much like a hat like this one. So it has, it's not dissimilar to EEGs and non-invasive brain-computer interfaces that have existed for many decades. But a distinction there is that you don't have to, it works a little better. You don't have to smear a bunch of oil and stuff on yourself to use it, the graphene interface. So these are getting pretty fast, suggesting the possibility of being able to do more than what human beings are able to do with manual control of their senses today, and suggestive of the possibility of novel kinds of interaction that I mentioned, this sense of collectivist and sharing of experiences, and greater empathy for human beings in this scenario. The second is the one that is most famously associated, unfortunately, with the Neuralink company, commandeered by Elon Musk, and that is a more invasive thing. It's a microsurgery behind the ear, and this is cloning about, I think now said to be cloning about 10,000 neurons, which would allow for a faster communication, as I said, than what we can do manually today. So here is the third option, connecting people's brains to a computer via their inner ear. The Spiral E brain-computer interface, developed by a team from Tsinghua University in Beijing, uses flexible in-ear material to establish a connection to the brain. So it's bridging somewhere between these two extremes of the other two brain-computer interfaces. It follows recent advances in BCI technology, which has seen companies like Elon Musk Neuralink test brain chips capable of reading minds of pigs and monkeys. Ultimately, the technology could offer full bandwidth data streaming to the brain. That is what I alluded to, and that is something that I think will reshape human experience. I think of myself standing next to a little tree here. I think of myself as rather like a little gnat living in this tree bark, relative to what I and our species could become. That might seem like a daunting prospect filled with peril, and that's a legitimate concern. But nevertheless, it is something that I think we should entertain, because the payoff would be tremendous in that scenario. I watched a program called Eye on AI yesterday, and um, the um, the host of that program is not someone who I agree with on everything. His politics are that perhaps of um, a tepid democratic socialist at best. Um, and so such people are not going to ever be in a position to fix the problems caused by capitalism. They are themselves fascist sympathizers upholding capitalism in a variety of ways. Um, but he is somebody who believes in tech accelerationism in a limited sense. He doesn't believe that singularity is near. He says at the end of every show, I believe, but he believes that nevertheless, advanced computing is about to transform um, the world in pretty impressive ways. Um, but when you listen to his program, he is generally criticizing exaggerated claims made by machine learning CEOs and personalities, or also addressing the equally problematic side of that, which is fear mongering about chatbots becoming autonomous or in some way causing cascading effects throughout a civil society that will destabilize society. And for the most part, the people who are saying that are people who are pretty specifically being paid to say that, to confuse the issue of the thing that would be disruptive there, which is the capitalist system that's killing the planet, the thing that should be disrupted, and generally failing to acknowledge that when these systems go rogue, so to speak, it will be because they're being controlled by fascists in the West. Tech CEOs are fascists. If anyone in the world is fascist, a wealthy person living in the U.S. serving the military-industrial complex is indeed a fascist. And those are the people who will be doing those dirty, dirty things. It's not Skynet scenario where those things take on a mind of their own. They're serving the evil people, but we're priming the pump with this narrative that says, "Oh, this was a fluke. This was just the actions of runaway AI that we couldn't have possibly predicted," and failing to attribute that problem to the very real fascists who will be and are today responsible for that. So this guy is interesting to watch. The Ion AI YouTube channel, Ion AI on YouTube. But yeah, I have to take it with a grain of salt. I listen to this program sometimes while I'm playing pool. um, I'll have these podcasts on while I'm playing pool with my friends, and I don't have a pool table in my apartment. I go to the community center and play, and I force my friends to listen to these nerdy machine learning and podcasts and things. So this um, uh, this person makes a good point, which is that, we shouldn't overstate the problems or benefits of these things. And he's skeptical, similarly, of the prospects of AI takeoff type effects through quantum computing or brain-computer interfaces. But I think that brain-computer interfaces are rather distinct from these, and because this is more distinctly human-centered by its nature. And I think this is a one narrative that Elon Musk was pushing for a while that was more coherent than most of his others, which is stating that we're at the verge of this advanced computing takeoff that would destabilize society, which for the most part, if we're talking about the U.S. and the fascist West, that's destabilizing that should be happening, maybe hopefully in a way that is not leading to tremendous amount of death.